Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today we're talking about a very cool new upper receiver from Bear Creek Arsenal. But before we get into that, I do need to thank the sponsor of the channel and the video. That is, of course, Gun Deals. Gun Deals, if you don't know, is a website that compiles the best deals in the industry. They don't buy or sell anything. They merely provide you with links to whatever it is that you happen to be looking for the best deal. And on top of that, if there's some sort of coupon code or something like that, usually that's included in the title or the description, so you can save even more money. Once again, they don't take your money, they don't buy or sell anything, they merely provide you with links to some of the best deals in the industry. So if you want to help the channel out, go ahead and just check them out. That is, again, gun.deals. Now, with all that out of the way, if you want to help me out personally, you can, of course, like, share, and subscribe. All that sort of stuff is free. You can also comment literally anything down below, which also helps me in the YouTube algorithm. There's also steel targets, which I am quickly running out of and probably will not be restocking for quite some time as steel prices have skyrocketed. Now, on top of that, there's also Subscribestar, which is just a pro to a Patreon. You send me a couple bucks every month, and I send you some additional content and get you entered in cool giveaways. Now, let's go ahead and talk about Bear Creek Arsenal. So as many of you know who have been following the channel for a long time, Bear Creek Arsenal has sent me several things in the past to review, including AR-15 upper receivers, AR-10 upper receivers, all that sort of stuff. They were the first company to ever send me an upper receiver to review, so there is kind of a long-term relationship that has been there. I've talked to a lot of the guys over there. I've met some of them in person at TriggerCon 2019, so there is a prior relationship there. They did send this upper receiver, not with anything on it, just the upper receiver, out to me for free. However, there has never been any sort of financial exchange between us. They merely provide me with products to review for you guys. So this will be a very positive review because I do think that they made a lot of excellent changes in their Gen 2 side charging upper receivers. However, there are still some issues that we are going to talk about, and Bear Creek Arsenal has been very good about listening to feedback and improving upon it. So if you were to ask me, what is the Bear Creek Arsenal Gen 2 upper receiver? This one here specifically is a 10.5-inch 5.56 upper receiver, 1-in-7 twist, parkerized barrel, not quite as nice as their nitrided stuff, 1-in-7 twist, 4150 steel, very high quality. I have a barrel behind me in the background, not sure if you can see it sitting there by itself, that has about 10,000 rounds on it before I took it off. The barrel did start to swell after about 10,000 rounds of very aggressive firing, so I do think that their barrels and other components that they make are very high quality. And it's important to remember that Bear Creek Arsenal actually manufactures a lot of these components and build them in-house, as they have a huge manufacturing facility and they make products for a lot of other companies. So even though you might not like Bear Creek Arsenal for whatever reason, whether that's valid or invalid, I'm not going to speak on that, you probably own some Bear Creek Arsenal components that they've manufactured in their facility. So here is the upper receiver by itself. As you can tell, it's a short little 10.5 guy, which I quite like. 10.5 is still a good barrel length, even though 11.5, 12.5 is kind of the new hotness. 13.7, 13.9, whatever else you guys want to argue about online. However, 10.5 still gets the job done, as long as the job you're looking to do is in its envelope. Now, I have had this upper receiver for several months and I have been testing on it basically since I got it. I've had it in many different configurations. I've had it with the SIG Romeo 7 and Juliet 3 micro magnifier. I have had it with the Spark, the Vortex Spark AR red dot on top of the new MD20 from Primary Arms, which is on that guy right there. And of course right here in this current configuration with a Swamp Fox Arrowhead 1-8, which is on the review docket eventually. This is what the accuracy testing was done with, which is why it's on here right now, because that's generally speaking the last thing I do with an upper receiver to make sure that everything has worn together quite nicely. In terms of round count, we're around 1,000 rounds, which I feel comfortable enough talking about the upper receiver and how it has held up so far. However, this is not going to be an extended 5-10,000 round review, as I would like to do on all of my guns. However, that much ammunition is very expensive. Now, of course, the biggest changes with the Gen 2 upper receivers is going to be this very nicely curved charging handle. Now, on the Gen 1 upper receivers, what you had was this knurled knob that works, but it's straight and it's not particularly ergonomic. On top of that, the mounting mechanism for this one is just a single screw through the center of the charging handle itself, and that had a tendency to walk out all of the time. Basically, you would Loctite it, you would go out and you would shoot it. The Loctite would get very, very hot because it's attached to the bolt carrier group, which has hot gases flowing through it. Because again, Loctite does not do well with high heat scenarios, and so it would back out every couple hundred rounds or so. It would be not terribly annoying, but basically every time you take it out to the range, you need to make sure that it's tightened down and make sure that it doesn't loosen on you while you're shooting, because it'll be quite obnoxious. It'll just be flopping around on the side of your bolt carrier. With the new Gen 2 charging handle, not only is it this very nice ergonomic curved piece, yes, it is reciprocating just like an AK, but it also acts as a forward assist, but the mounting method has also been changed. So if I were to remove this, again, single set screw, it would pull off, and then you would also see a dowel, or a steel dowel, a steel pin, whatever you want to call it, that inserts itself into the bolt carrier group, that locks it in place from rotating left or right. And on this specific bolt, with the new design, new thread pitch, all of that, I have not had it come loose on me once, and the only time I've taken it off is for cleaning at around the 500 round mark, which was the only time that this got cleaned. The only reason I cleaned it was because I was switching up the setup. I had just run it suppressed through a lot of steel case ammunition, and I wanted to check it out, see how it was doing, that sort of thing, and of course actually get in there, because you can't take the bolt carrier out without removing the charging handle first. Now, of course, the new charging handle and mounting system is the most noticeable change from the Gen 1. However, there are also new improvements on here as well. For instance, the rear channel where the charging handle slides into has also been widened a little bit, so that it's much less difficult to pinch your fingers and cut off skin. On the Gen 1s, I had a AR-10 Gen 1 charging handle, and if you really rack on it, you can get your fingers caught in here very easily, and it'll just rip the skin right off. So a huge improvement in my opinion, on top of the charging handle not actually coming loose on you. So if you flip it around to the other side, you will also notice the area in which the bolt hold open, bolt release, whatever you want to call it, goes has been widened quite a bit and has some additional cuts in there. The reason for that is that it is now much more compatible with aftermarket bolt releases, bolt hold opens, again, whatever you want to call it. So it'll accept a lot more of those bigger aftermarket ones, which I personally find quite nice, as you know, these uppers are going on tons of different lower receivers, so if it has more compatibility, that is of course a good thing. It also has some slight different cuts in the rear, on the front and back, to trim it down just a little bit. Originally, the one downside I would say about the upper receivers themselves is these are billet upper receivers. They do weigh more than just your standard forged upper receiver. They're going to add 4, 5, 6 ounces because there is a lot more material in here. It's just very, very thick, a little chunky. So when they try to take out some of the weight in the back, make it a little bit more slim, a little more tapered, I do like that quite a bit. Though again, I think that if they were going to go really aggressive on it, they could shave off a couple more ounces on their upper receivers. Though again, that means more machining time, which means more cost, which you're probably not going to notice for the extra couple ounces that it adds. Now, to talk about the bolt carrier group briefly, it is one of their standard bolt carrier groups, which I quite like. I have about 20,000 rounds on Bear Creek Arsenal bolts, and they have performed very, very well for me. I've only ever had one failure from their non 762x39 bolts. 762x39 bolts are kind of their own separate thing, and they're very complicated and hard to get right. So their 5.56 bolts, again, I have about 20,000 rounds to them, and I've only had one failure. The one failure that I have had is on their gas key screws. They are YFS screws, not the standard mil-spec grade 8, which are a little stronger, a little more high quality. So the only problem that I've ever had with one of their bolts is one of those YFS screws breaking on me and causing the gun not to run until I just simply replace the screw. Now, one change that Bear Creek Arsenal has done to all of their new bolts, no matter what bolt you buy from them, is it has much more concentric staking, very, very aggressively staking. Basically, they don't just stake the top of the gas key, they actually stake the entirety of the gas key that sits next to the knob of the bolt that holds your gas key in place. So it has much more even, much more concentric pressure, and that is on all Bear Creek Arsenal new bolts. So it is a nice feature. Again, I believe the bolt carrier is 8620. The bolt itself is 9310, which theoretically is better, and it's all nitrited, MPI tested, all of that sort of good stuff. So it's a very basic bolt carrier group, but again, I've only ever had one real failure after about 20,000 rounds on their 5.56 bolts. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would I ever want a side charging upper receiver? And there are actually a couple very good benefits. One of those benefits is that the standard AR-15 charging handle is the least ergonomic part of any AR, and I know that people spend literally upwards of $100 on their upgraded charging handles to remove that problem. However, none of those are as fast or as intuitive or as strong as this charging handle right here. So while yes, you may not like that it reciprocates, I'm not sure why your hand would ever be in this position to get hit, because your firing hand can't be there, of course, because it's running the trigger, so it can't be up here. And I'm not sure why you would put your left hand up here, or again, if you're a left-handed person, your right hand up here. But again, it is reciprocating just like an AK, and because it does reciprocate, it is attached to the bolt itself. It also works as a very large, very aggressive forward assist should you need it. Now, another benefit that these upper receivers have that you may have already noticed is that they come with a plug in the end here to lock off and seal off the rear of the upper receiver, which is quite nice in a couple scenarios. Now, the Gen 2s and all previous or all new ones should come with an O-ring seal as well. My Gen 1 over there does not have an O-ring, though I could very easily go out and buy a 10-cent O-ring to seal it up. But basically that means that the rear of the AR is 100% sealed off, which is a huge advantage when it comes to shooting suppressed. Now, what that means is that when you shoot suppressed, it doesn't matter how much back pressure your suppressor has, anything like that, you get no gas whatsoever coming from the rear of the upper receiver. You still get stuff coming out the ejection port, of course, because you can't get rid of that. It's just always going to come out the ejection port. But there is absolutely no stinging, no problems, nothing like that whatsoever coming from the back of the upper receiver. And I know that there are certain charging handles that try and save you from some of that, but nothing is as effective as this rear plug that actually does seal up the rear of your gun and stop all of those harmful, cancerous gases coming back into your face and your eyeballs. Now, of course, because of this design, it does not have a dust cover, so it is going to leave your bolt more exposed to the elements. So depending on your situation, that can be a bad thing. And for somebody like me who just always closes my dust cover right after I'm done shooting, you know, it is something to get used to, but there is no dust cover. Now, with this upper receiver, I shoot in Washington where it is quite rainy, quite muddy. I have not had any problems in terms of reliability whatsoever. And again, this is at this point like 90% really crappy steel cased ammunition. Something I do want to say is I've had some really, really terrible luck with steel cased ammunition. For instance, I had one box that was just entirely light primer strikes, and then it never showed up again. So it was just a literal bad box of like Tula or Wolf steel cased ammunition. So I feel like even for steel cased ammunition, the quality control has gone way downhill. So that about does it for the actual upper receiver portion. Again, there are a couple downsides. It is heavier. It does have a reciprocating charging handle without a dust cover. However, it is a much more ergonomic charging method, a much stronger charging method than your standard AR-15 charger. Right. It also has a completely sealed off back, so you're never going to get that gas back in the face. And just those two benefits alone are huge for someone like me, and the downsides are a little smaller. Overall, great job on the upper receiver itself. Now let's go ahead and talk about the handguard. Now the handguards themselves, the design is mostly good, except for some structural problems, which we will talk about. But the handguards themselves are nice and thin. They're MLOK on the 6.9 and 3 position or whatever it is. So they are, you can attach more than everything if you really wanted to on here, but it does have a couple problems. You notice this muzzle device up here? This is a terrible suppressor mount. But the reason I have it on here is because you cannot put a direct thread device on here. Not even just suppressors like this, which is a quite large suppressor. It also stops you from direct threading things like the PWS comp. I'm not sure if like the Surefire Wardens or some other larger muzzle devices will fit, again, because the rail extends beyond the threads, and I'm not sure why you would ever do that. I get it maybe for some aesthetic purposes, but for actually mounting, you know, serious muzzle devices or a lot of suppressors or anything else on there, it's going to be a huge problem, especially if you're trying to direct thread. Now, if you're using like suppressor mounts and other things like that that extend it out about a ½ inch, you're going to be golden. But again, there's even some suppressor mounts that will not allow you to mount your suppressor on this gun because of the rail. Now, I know for most people it's not going to be a problem, so just ignore this section. But if you are trying to direct thread a larger muzzle device that has a muzzle diameter larger than 1.3 inches, you're going to have a very, very bad time. I almost cut off the last ½ inch of the rail. The problem is if I do that, I actually lose my bottom MLOK slot, and I have almost no material protecting my other front MLOK slots, so I actually decided on not doing that. Overall, the rail needs to be shortened about a ½ inch, and we would be mostly golden. The other problem that I have with the rail, and this is the first time I've had this problem with this rail specifically, because I've had a lot of these guns that have very similar rails on them, is that during the double drop test on one of the optics that I was testing with this gun on it, I had the rail cave in on me on the left side of the gun here. And the reason for that is that the rail, while it's thick material and it looks quite good, it's not particularly structurally sound. And let me see if I can explain this for you. So basically you have all this material in the back holding it together, nice, and a bunch of material here in the end holding it together, also good. But in the middle 8 or 9 inches on the rail, the only thing holding this piece of MLOK, this piece of MLOK, and of course your other piece of MLOK together are these two tiny little connectors on either side that are about an eighth of an inch thick. So when you think about it, all of your MLOK sections of rail are only held in place by a 1/2 inch of aluminum, and other than that they're completely just separated, floating out in the air by themselves, and very, very susceptible to bending. Now the solution to this problem for Bear Creek Arsenal should be very, very simple. Instead of just using these two very, very tiny connectors to connect your MLOK slots to the main rail itself, what it should be is it should be 4 connectors, so twice as many connectors, and they should also be twice as large. So instead of an 1/8 of an inch, a 1/4 of an inch, or bigger, because again you're only sacrificing maybe 1 or 2 ounces in terms of extra material. And if they can make their rails much, much stronger, much more structurally sound for basically no more additional weight, I think that is a huge win. So that is the 2 things holding back this rail. Other than that, it'd be a really, really good design. Simply because it's very thin, you can wrap your arm completely around it. It's not particularly heavy. It does use very thick material though. Again, because of the structural weakness, it is still a problem. So now that we're done talking about the rail and some of the problems that I have with it, I think the design is very, very close to being good, but they definitely do need to improve in a couple areas. They are aware of this, and I believe they are going to be making changes on it very, very soon. So now let's go ahead and talk about the barrel. I mentioned it in the beginning. It is a 5.56 chambering, 1 in 7 twist, 4150 steel. This is just the phosphate finish, or not the phosphate, the parkerized finish. Their nitride stuff is better. It's less prone to rust. It will be a little bit more durable. So there is a lot of advantages to their nitrided stuff. However, their parkerized stuff, as we'll get into, has performed quite well. Now, in terms of profile, this is an M4 profile, so it weighs your standard 19.3 ounces or something like that. So it's a very, very good barrel profile, 0.750 gas block. The gas port diameter, I believe, is 0.070, exactly the same as it is on their new 11.5s, which I really, really enjoyed. Very, very positive review on their 11.5. The 10.5 barrel feels subjectively a little more punchy than the 11.5 barrel. Not exactly sure why that is. However, it is still miles above the Roscoe 10.5 and this Palmetto State Armory 16 right here. Now, again, the Roscoe barrels I had good luck with. I think that they were very, very accurate, very reliable. The quality on them was great. I did have problems with how overgassed they were, because they are very, very overgassed. They would eject M855 and M193 at around 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, which is a little punchy, a little more punchy than it should be. This rifle with a carbine, because I use it in a couple different buffer setups, with a carbine buffer, carbine spring, would eject brass case ammunition at about 2 o'clock. So not too bad, right? A little more overgassed than it should be, but not too bad. And steel cased anywhere from 330 to 430, depending on the lot of steel cased ammo that I had. And then later on in testing, I switched to my tried and true H2 buffer plus Strike Industries flat wire recoil spring. I've had extremely good luck with that setup. I run it on most of my guns that I actually like to run, unless there's something special about that gun. The recoil impulse that gives me is my favorite. So I really enjoy running an H2 and a Strike Industries. With that, it definitely tames down the recoil impulse on the gun. It still's a little more punchy than some of the nicest uppers out there, or certainly like it'd be a considerable difference for some of the more like race gun tunings where it's just on the bleeding edge of reliability. However, for a budget or value brand like Bear Creek Arsenal that packs a ton of value, and again, less than $300 even in today's market, I think that the gassing is basically perfect because they're probably expecting morons like me to run a lot of steel-cased ammunition, because you're probably not buying the cheapest upper receiver on the market and then putting the most expensive ammunition through it. So I totally understand their gassing, but it is, you know, probably 10-15% more than it absolutely needs to be, even for optimum reliability, though again, people like me do choose to shoot a lot of really crappy ammunition, and we don't really clean our guns all that much. So the gas setting on the barrel itself is perfectly fine. I would not throw on an adjustable gas block or anything else like that. Maybe a slightly heavier buffer if you want to, if you want a little bit softer, slower recoil impulse, but other than that, it is ready to go outside of the box. Now let's go ahead and talk about accuracy. And now accuracy, generally speaking, on most of my Bear Creek Arsenals is anywhere from 1.5 to 2 MOA with most loadings, with most really good loadings, and that's perfectly fine for me for what I'm paying. However, on this barrel, again, just the accuracy I happened to get out of it on that day happened to be quite exceptional. So basically I shot 4 different loads through it. I shot some 55 grain Tula, some 69 grain reloads, nice, some 75 grain PPU match, and some 77 grain IMI Razor Core. The 55 grain Tula ammunition, a 5-shot group, landed at just under an inch at 50 yards, which is under 2 MOA with just really crappy steel-cased ammunition. I will take that all day, every day. My 69 grain reloads did a little bit worse, actually at a little bit over an inch, but again, they're more reloaded to be consistent and lightly gassed. They're not super punchy ammunition, and they're fairly consistent. I've taken them out to 500 yards, but they're not pristine accuracy wise. The 75 grain match also came in at under an inch from PPU, so under 2 MOA with match ammunition, perfectly fine. And then 4 of the IMI Razor Core ammunition landed in the exact same hole, basically in around a ½ inch at 50 yards. So that, again, that's around 1 MOA at 100 yards. But the last round of the 77 grain Razor Core IMI ammunition, I pulled it like a doofus and enlarged the group to a little bit under an inch, though still that's still under 2 MOA for, again, a 5-shot group out of a 10.5 inch M4 profile barrel. So the accuracy, I would say, on a good day, you're going to get around 1 MOA with really nice match quality ammunition, and with most other loadings, you're going to be looking at around 1.5 to 2 MOA, which is more than acceptable, and which is why I would call the accuracy on this little guy excellent. So overall, that's really what I would say about this upper receiver. I consider basically everything on it excellent or heading in that direction for, again, one of the cheapest upper receivers on the market. There are some problems or downsides inherent to a side charging upper receiver. Again, inherent just in the design that it has to be a side charging upper receiver. So whether you like that or don't like that is kind of your own personal decision to make, whether or not that will work for you. I do think that there are some objective problems with the rail. However, if it's a light duty target gun or something like that, you're not dropping it, you're not mounting suppressors, then it's not even going to be a downside for you. However, I think they could improve the rail for everybody, and that would just be better in general. Again, without really adding any additional cost, because they're literally using less material and a little bit less machining to make the rail a little bit stronger. So overall, that is the video, guys. I want to say thank you to everyone who watched, and again, if you want to help out the channel in any way you can, of course, like, share, and subscribe. Check out my steel targets, check out Subscribe Star, but again, that's everything. Thank you once again for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.